As the saying goes, silence can be deafening. And this is precisely the case with the current standoff between the world's two largest economies. The US and China have been at loggerheads over a variety of issues from trade to Taiwan to alleged human rights abuses. But what's most striking about this conflict is not the disputes themselves, but rather the lack of communication between the two sides. There has been a noticeable breakdown in diplomatic niceties, replaced by a growing animosity that threatens to engulf the entire world. What exactly is going on here? More importantly, where is this silence leading us? To answer these questions, it helps to take a closer look at the history of US-China relations. As many experts have noted, the relationship between these two countries has always been a bit of an anomaly. On the one hand, they are strategic rivals who compete in almost every realm from economic to military. On the other hand, they are also deeply intertwined in ways that make decoupling nearly impossible. This has led to a sort of push-pull dynamic that has characterized the bilateral relationship for decades. During the Cold War, for example, the US and China were on opposite sides of the ideological divide. But they also cooperated on a number of important issues, most notably in their shared opposition to the Soviet Union. After the collapse of communism in 1989, the US and China seemed to be headed for a genuine partnership. The Americans saw the rise of a democratic and capitalist China as a major foreign policy win. And the Chinese, for their part, welcomed the prospect of greater engagement with the US as a way of legitimizing their own political system at home. But this honeymoon period didn't last for long. By the end of the 20th century, the US and China were once again on a collision course. The main reason for this was the growing disparity in wealth between the two countries. As China's economy boomed, the American public began to view Beijing as a rival rather than a partner. And this perception was only reinforced by China's increasingly assertive foreign policy. Most evident in its support for North Korea's authoritarian regime, by the time the 21st century rolled around, the US and China were essentially locked in a new kind of Cold War. This time, however, the conflict is not ideological but economic. The Americans are worried that China's rise will diminish their own global standing, and they have responded by containing Beijing's influence through a variety of means, from military alliances to trade wars. For their part, the Chinese have seen these moves as nothing less than an attempt to contain their own development, and so they have responded by doubling down on their confrontational rhetoric. The result of all this is that we now have a situation where the US and China are technically not at war, but are instead engaged in a silent Cold War that is just as dangerous. There are no overt hostilities, but there is a growing animus between the two sides. The usual diplomatic niceties have been replaced by a war of words. And both sides seem determined to escalate the conflict rather than find a compromise. This is not good news for the rest of the world. The conflict between the US and China is so significant that it risks destabilizing the entire global order. These two countries are simply too big and too powerful for their rivalry to be anything less than all-consuming. And this is why it is so important for them to find a way to coexist peacefully. Unfortunately, however, there is little sign of this happening anytime soon. Now, the silence between the US and China is only growing louder, and the rest of us are left to wonder what happens when the volume is turned up to 11. As the silence between the US and China continues, it is clear that the world is entering a new and dangerous era of geopolitical conflict. The old rules-based order is being torn up and a new balance of power is emerging. In this brave new world, the only thing that is certain is that the future will be shaped by conflict and cooperation between the world's two largest economies. It is a future that we should all be very worried about. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content. Thank you for watching.